Hello, my name is Richard Shepard. I am the writer, director, and co-producer of the film Mercy, which you just watched, and you're clearly watching again, and I thank you for that. Mercy is the definition of a labor of love project. We ended up making this movie in 18 days in the winter of 1995 for the astronomically crazy budget of $52,000, which was $7,000 more than we had at the time. But literally, we couldn't. We had no money, and we basically had to make it work. It was so crazy that every department's budget was $500. So the production designer, who had $500, and the costume designer had $500, and locations had $500. Basically, that was it. So we had to get everything we possibly could for free. And if not, it was loaned to us, or we stole it, or we lied to people, because at $52,000, you really can't pay for anything. We had to get our film developed. We had to pay for our lights and other things that are just hard costs. So everything else was just sort of done with the chutzpah of the people involved, many of whom have gone on to sort of illustrious, excellent film careers. This being an early project of theirs. Rolf Kent, who I produced it with and who did the incredible score, is now a huge composer and did the scores to Election and About Schmidt, and is just very in-demand cameraman and composer. And our camerawoman Sarah Cawley I've worked with 3 times after this, along with our editor. And it's really a great group of people who came together to make this film. And what I'm going to talk about on this DVD track is sort of the process of how you can go about making a $52,000 movie in New York City. One of the things you have to do is sort of be inventive. I mean, this car that Sam Rockwell is driving was our gaffer's car, and he loaned it to us. The building that John Rubinstein is jogging up of were the offices of our production office that we got for free because we sort of made a deal with them. And so we sort of were making deals left and right to try and get things for free in order to make this movie. There were no dressing rooms for the cast. Our production vans were donated to us by a fuel and oil company out in Long Island, Bayside Fuel and Oil, and they gave us 5 vans, and we in turn showed their van at one point when the FBI burst out of an undercover van. It's a Bayside Fuel and Oil van. There was nothing that we paid for that we could have got for free. The woman who plays John's secretary in the scene is the actress Maura Tierney, who you probably know from the ER TV series, and she also starred in my movie Oxygen with Adrian Brody that I made after this, and also in the film Scotland, PA that I produced. She's a friend of mine from NYU and basically flew into New York to do half a day on this movie as a favor to me. And she's also been in every single film I've ever made in some way or another. So I'm glad she's in this. It's kind of strange to see the World Trade Center behind John Rubinstein. This roof shot is great because we have the Empire State Building and the World Trade Center, but of course it instantly dates the film. Many things in this movie date the film. That certainly does. And a lot of the sort of subject matter and the places we shot had to do with early 90s New York City. A racially divided city, and a class difference was evident in many ways in the city at the time. The rich and the poor were very far apart. And that's what I kind of wanted to do in this film. I wanted to explore the concept of rich and poor. And John Rubinstein's so good, and one of the reasons we did that opening scene with him on the roof to show his sort of... by the way, this is a stock shot from the movie No Way Out, for your interest. John it was difficult for us to figure a way to show this arrogant businessman in a sort of entertaining way so that we'd be interested in his story without just completely hating him. So, jogging up the stairs, originally he was supposed to be jogging through his office, but we couldn't afford an office, so we had him jogging up the stairs and having his secretary stand in the cold. And we have him negotiating with this clown here who's played by my best friend in the world, the writer Mark Mullen, who did a favor for me. Basically, the goal in the first 6 minutes was how to establish John Rubinstein as a prick, but still be interested enough in him, so that when his daughter is kidnapped, we have an emotional investment in him and an interest in finding out what really happened. We basically were able to use some Screen Actors Guild actors and some non-Screen Actor Guild actors. In the deal we dealt with SAG, we were paying the Screen Actors Guild actors $75 a day, and we used 8 of them. And the rest of the cast, including Mark and the limo driver, who's played by my friend Chris Quinn, and many of the other roles were done by people who were not professional actors. They're great in it, and it was fun working with my friends. But basically, I couldn't afford to pay these people a full cast. So I basically paid the few actors like Sam and Amber and John Rubinstein, who, I desperately needed. And then the rest I sort of, we improvised, because this was a movie where no one on the crew was being paid. And in fact, they all got deferred salaries. And so this was a situation where we were being as creative as we possibly could. The good news is that all those people who were in SAG ended up getting their full salaries and even profits, because this movie ended up, paying the investors back, and the crew got some of their deferment, and that was very satisfying, because when most people work on a $52,000 movie, of which there's about $2,000 a year at this point made, most of them don't see their money back. John Rubinstein's apartment in this movie is actually the production designer Ann Ross's parents' apartment, and if we weren't able to get this apartment, we would have had no movie, because we certainly couldn't pay for a Fifth Avenue apartment rental. But Anne was able to convince her parents to let us film there. We obviously didn't pay for the apartment. We didn't even tell the building's board that we were shooting in the apartment. We basically just bribed the night elevator guy to let us bring our equipment up when no one was really paying attention. And everyone, I guess, thought we were having a party in Anne's apartment for 5 days when we were shooting. But we kind of got in and out of there before anyone noticed, even though we were in a very sort of Tony East Side apartment, which works perfectly, of course, for Frank Kramer's character. What you're watching right now unfortunately, is a pan and scan version of our film, because we made this transfer in 1996, right after we were finished shooting or cutting the film, and we did it not in the 1:8:5 screen aspect ratio, which is fine for 99% of the movie, but in a shot like this, where you're supposed to see the reflection of the maid, Angela, in the mirror, and Frank in the same shot, some of it's very frustrating that the pan and scan cuts it off. And I guess throughout this movie, I'll point out things that bother me, both in the video and also in my directing, because I think it's important to be able to look at a movie shot in 18 days and sort of be critical. But that's certainly one of the things when I watch this DVD. I'm glad it's out, believe me, but drives me crazy. When John's talking to Sam Rockwell when we were shooting, I was basically doing the voices off camera, and I did them for Sam when John was off camera, just to try and get the right tone and the right pacing. We had done some rehearsals with the two of them, and so I kind of got an idea on how the two of them would act. But it's always strange when you're doing these phone conversations, because basically the actor is just talking to no one, and you're trying to get the timing right, so later it will all cut together. The actor you're about to see, Ajay, who plays the cab driver, who was great, of course, but the problem was that he couldn't drive, and he didn't bother telling us that until we were halfway done, with the day, and he showed up to shoot these scenes, which were supposed to take about an hour, and ended up taking about 6 hours because he couldn't drive. So we were basically taking our lives into our hands every shot where the car was moving, like right here. And basically, that's why most of the scene is played with the car not moving. That's why he says, "Stop the cab," because we were fearful of our lives. And now usually we would tow the cab, because that's what they do in normal movies. You're towed and you've got a whole crew in a truck ahead of it. But we didn't have that luxury. We couldn't afford it. So he was really driving a cab that was loaned to us by a real cab driver who wanted a speaking role in the movie, and I'll talk about that a little later. So we have this free cab. We only have 6 hours with it. He can't drive, and basically Sarah, the camera woman, her first assistant, the first assistant director, myself, and the 2 actors were in this cab, shoved in. I'm right off of camera there in order for us to be able to film this because we had no monitors. We really couldn't see it if we were not in the cab. And Iron Strauss, our brilliant sound man, was in the trunk of the car because it was the only place that he could fit in. And he was there for hours. I don't think he's ever really recovered. These scenes with Sam Rockwell and Amber Cain and Rhea Silversmith, who plays young Nicole, are basically spread throughout the movie. They're 22 pages worth of scenes that we shot in 2 days. Basically, that's all the time we had. So, and these are some of the best scenes in the movie, but they were done in an incredible rush. In fact, the location that we were supposed to film in, we lost right before we were to shoot. So Sarah, the cameraman, and I had a shot list 22 pages during lunch the day before we shot because we had not been in the place until that time. So we went in here and basically just gunned our way through it, and it is much to the credit of these actors that these scenes are so good. We were lucky to have some rehearsal before the time so that we were able to go over these scenes and talk about dialogue, and I think it was very helpful. And rehearsal is so helpful on a small movie like this because it's free and it gives you the time to work out any kinks. And a lot of the stuff that Sam and Amber brought to the parts were done in those rehearsals so that when we got to the set and had to shoot 11 pages a day, we were able to actually do it with some competence. And a lot had to do also with Sarah Cawley's camera work and that she was able to light so quickly. But really, I mean, we were busting a gut to try and get this stuff down. Sam and Amber are so good, and they are really, it's a pleasure to even watch them so many years later. I mean, they just leap off the screen.